All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited for this week's episode. I'm here with Crystal Langen, and we are going to talk about all things pleasure-based business and also diving into and talking about finding your voice and blabbing your way to the bank. And so, Crystal, we've met basically through like Mama Gina crowd, pussy-based business. And all the goddesses in that realm. So
Yeah.
if you know, you know. If you don't, we'll talk more about it. and and so I'll do a short little introduction for you, and then I'd love to hear from you. You know how you got started with everything, what you're doing now, and then we'll dive into pleasure-based business and building your six-figure business with pleasure. So Crystal is a business coach, and she wholeheartedly believes in pleasure first. She's a mom of three and has been partnered for 20 years and still has multiple orgasms on the regular, which I love that you said that. And her passion is to take women along with her as they run towards their dreams of changing the world one golden pussy at a time. So in less than 12 months, she built her pleasure-based business to multiple six figures. And she has found her calling as a business coach. And she ultimately just really loves sharing her experience, her ideas, her structures and systems, and ideas and lessons, and really making it about taking messy action and pleasure-based action. So with that being said, because I'm so all on board for all of this and really try to live from that place myself, I'd love to hear how you got started on this, and like maybe even for the people that are just starting out, like who are in that place where things aren't clicking, they're not working, and how pleasure helped you like overcome that. But yes, please introduce
Oh,
yourself
I'm
before I
like,
start asking a ton of questions.
where do I start here? And there's so many good, juicy things. So yeah, I mean, I thought you did a great intro. That was perfect. I have three kids, a husband. I'm the breadwinner. So my husband got fired the week before Corona shelter in place in California because he was in a really toxic corporate environment. And he's like a gentle, kind, like highly intelligent human. And his boss was just like horrific. So finally it just imploded. And I was like, fine, stay home. And then the kids came for shelter in place. And it was like, great, take care of the kids. Make me lunch. Run the household. So we've kind of, and he supported the family while I was a stay-at-home mom for a period of time. And now I'm the breadwinner, and it's been working out really well. I really like it. So he's what I call my director of PR, and we think we're hilarious. So director of PR means director of pleasure relations.
I love it.
So we joke about that all the time. I'm like, honey, it's time for your review. Like, honey, you haven't been keeping up with your pleasure. You need to pleasure me. Right. So we just make it fun. And the truth is, like, I do need pleasure to keep going, right? I mean, this current state of things right now with like the election intensity and corona intensity and like all the other intensities, like the Black Lives Matter movement and like all the things, our nervous systems are so off track, dysregulated. And I use a lot of comedy too, actually. Comedy and pleasure are my two like go to nervous system calming tools, right? And so that's where that comes from, because when my nervous system's regulated, then I can serve my clients better. I can be more present. I can be online more. I can make more relationships and connections and all the things that we do in business
Mhm.
as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if I'm curious because I get this a lot in my business as a pleasure-based business as well. Do you have people that are sometimes confused about what you mean by pleasure? Like they're like, oh, she must teach about sex or something. Do you get that
I
a
know.
lot?
I worry about that a lot, actually. That's always on my mind of like, well, do they think that I'm a like sex coach or relationship coach or like what is the pleasure piece and what does it have to do with business? So I just try my best to explain that often, that it's business coach, but it's with the principles of pleasure, right? And because this is so new, I mean, we're on the cutting edge, we're the innovators here. We're the ones bringing this to the world for the first time, or the first time in our generations, right? And so I think it's important to educate our audience along the way and pull them along with us so that they know, because if I heard that for the first time, I'd probably be a little confused.
Is she having
I
sex
mean,
for
a lot.
business? What's happening? Yeah. Yeah.
Pleasure and business, no, those don't go together. It's the opposite.
Right. And this is it's such a more feminine way of doing business. And I'm curious too. So when you what really shifted for you? Like how did you work before versus after with the pleasure based, and like how quickly did that shift for you, or what did that look like? So people who are like, I'm like thinking about it but not sure, like what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Okay. This is such a good question, because it's like, how far back do I want to go? I mean, I worked in corporate before I had my own business. So I did that whole thing with like the commuting to San Francisco and all the things, and working many, many hours and working my way up to the company. Um, and then I had my own like small business for a little while before I got into coaching. And then I started doing a lot of public speaking. And I had a coach that was not pleasure based business. In fact, was very, very toxic. It was a husband wife team, and the husband was especially very toxic. Um, and so I tried and I tried, and I ended up having to let them go. I ended up having to fire them. So, step one, fire your toxic coach. Sorry, but and then I had this other coach for like a short period of time. It was like a 4-month contract, but she kept saying to me, like, Crystal, why aren't you doing all the things that I told you to do? And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, it's just not working for me. Like, this just doesn't feel right. So I tried a couple of times with a couple of coaches, and then I kind of laid low for a little while. And then I met my coach, and she was the first one who I saw talking about doing business in a pleasurable way, like pleasure first, during, and after, all the way through. And as soon as I hired her, I pretty much hit the ground running. And it was like, oh, I can do this. And after I hired her, my first launch was 23,000.
Um, I'm like, awesome. Let's pause here and like, yes. Like,
And
yes.
then I was like, and then my second launch was, I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 80,000.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
you're
how does
like,
that
and it
happen?
was way more fun than the other ones.
It
Yeah,
was,
on all the
it was,
ways.
yes, it was so fun and like such a rush. And it was like, oh, I'm home. Like, I get this because I'm naturally a sensual person. I love pleasure. Like I said, I love comedy. That's like a big, huge pleasure boost for me. And it was like, instead of how come you're not doing these things I'm telling you to do, and how come you're not fitting into this box, it's like, oh, let's talk about how you are, how you're a mom, how you're messy, like how you like don't always think things through, and you just like go, let's figure out how to work that into your business instead of vice versa, working you into your business. Oh, here comes my director of PR with my coffee.
Love it. Coffee delivery. And
Thank
I love this because I feel like, our mutual coach, Julia Wells, talks about this, where the bro marketing, and how even with females like Marie Forleo and Gabby Bernstein and all the people that I really, was like following when I first started in my coaching career, that I felt like I had to fit into the box, like fit into the thing that everyone else is doing because that's what works. but it would never worked for me. Like, and all the things that I've had other coaches like in the past tell me to do, it's like it just isn't clicking for me. And I would see it work for some people, but it's and same thing for me when I learned how to really get in the pleasure of doing the things or delegating things off, like the things that I really am not good at or don't like doing, like how can I hand these off to a VA or somebody. But then
Yeah.
also I'd love to hear from you how you dive into pleasure on a deeper level when it's the things that you don't want to do, like when it's like really getting into that place of like, okay, no, I don't feel like doing this or wanting to do this, but I know that if I, like, let's use like consistency. Like, I know that if I consistently show up, that it's actually going to give me the pleasure that I'm looking for. And I'd love to hear your experience around that, whether it was around your voice or consistency or something that you just really were like, I don't love doing this, but it helped your kind of move the needle in your business.
Yeah, I mean, here's like a simple one that came to mind like pretty quickly. Sending and creating and sending contracts. Oh my gosh. It's just, I don't know why, but like, look at me. I can't even, I'm so uncomfortable already just talking about it. But it's a simple one, right? Like, so it's easy to talk about, but just the website and like filling in the boxes, and I just start to get confused, and I'm worried that I'm going to make a mistake because it's like a contract. So what me and my husband would do is we do it late at night, like after the kids are in bed. We turn on comedy on the TV, and we'd hand my laptop back and forth, right? Like I'd be well fed, like I'd make sure that I knew like the terms of the contract that I needed to type in. He helped me create a template so I could just like easily fill in like all the terms, all of that. But I would like hand him my laptop. He would fill in like a piece of it and then he'd hand it back to me. So it was almost like I would do the hard parts in little bits and then have breaks in between. I know it seems like just do the contract, like just take 10 minutes and do the contract, right? But it just literally was too much for me. And it would bring up like anxiety and all these things. So it'd be like, all right, we have like a contract pleasure, like routine.
I love it.
And I think it's important sometimes, an important strategy can be like those small, just doing things in small chunks until it's done and going slow. I mean, just like when you're in an intimate situation too, sometimes you just need to slow down, take your time. You don't need to hurry up and get to the end of anything at like a certain point by a certain time. And if you do that multiple times, then pretty soon my nervous system got used to it. And it was like, oh, now I just like do it. And it
Mhm.
doesn't take like an hour to do something that like should take 10 minutes. Now it just takes the 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But I allowed myself to hold my nervous system and hold myself. And like, of course, like afterwards we'd like celebrate, like, woohoo, it's done. And like, like then we'd like do all the things, right? But I think it's like tending to yourself before, during, and after whatever it is, and allowing that slowness, and then trusting that you'll get to a point where it will be okay.
Yeah, that's so important, especially as like a trauma-informed somatic coach myself around helping people feel safe in their bodies, because that's really what it is, right? The pleasure is like this contentment, this like, okay, it's not making me go into a trigger or trauma response, which happens, right? When we do new things or in this case, in filling out the form. And I love how you did it in increments like that. I do the same thing where I'll turn on like a series of something like Harry Potter or something just in the background to soothe my nervous system, because it's like, oh, this is familiar. it's like taking care of my inner child or like whatever, you know, it's like a thing. But I think this is where so many new coaches get hung up because they're either in that kind of like trauma response of like, I need this to happen now because I need the money, or, you know, like there's like a scarcity thing happening, or an ego thing where they want it to happen and they want to just like have it be on their timeline. I've done all of these things, so I know I'm like, I've totally done these things. And then it gets to a point where it almost, I think for a lot of women, it's like they have to go through those things and get to the point where they're like, I can't, this isn't sustainable. What are my other options? And then it's like realizing how easy it can be in using the pleasure, and how much more fulfilling and sustainable that is to be in like the marathon and the fun of it versus like having to have these quick things happen. And in that slowness in that marathon is usually when things speed up, which is the irony, right? Of all of the things. So I'm glad that you spoke to that, because I think that will be so beneficial to so many coaches in this group that are newer to coaching business. And I'd also love, because I know this has been your experience and something that you work with women on, is your process of finding your voice or using your voice to create the business that you want. Because you talk about, you know, blabbing your way to the bank. And I'd love to hear more from you, what your journey has been with that and how you work with women around that.
Oh my goodness, yes. Just like everything, there's so many things to say about all of it.
Yeah.
But what comes to mind when you ask me that question is there is typically a charge around that word blab, and the word blab is wrong. And I talk a little bit about spiral-based thinking and speaking versus linear, right? And so there's individuals that identify with spiral-based thinking and speaking, but we have been taught that that's wrong. Get to the point. Give me the executive summary. Hurry up. Wait, what are you talking about? You know, right? So like the thing is, if you are naturally a spiral based thinker, speaker, and you try to fit yourself into the linear box, you're going to have all kinds of trauma responses. You're going to be shut down. You're going to probably, and I've seen this a lot, you're probably going to disembody from your speaking. And one of the biggest tragedies is that there is a reason for spiral based thinking and speaking. And one of the reasons is when you ask a speaker like that a question, they kind of like zoom up and consider everything. So they're actually high functioning, high processing, lots of data individuals. So there's a high level of intelligence happening there. And because of that high level of intelligence, there's a lot of interesting ideas that can come through when you allow the spiral to happen. And so the spiral's happening, the blab is happening, and it's going around in a spiral, and it's considering things, and it's considering things all the way through. And typically, if you allow it, at the end of that spiral will pop out like a golden treasure, like a wisdom bomb or a new idea. So I think it's really important that we embrace spiral-based thinking and speaking more and more and more, and allowed more and more space for it, because we are in a critical time in humanity where we need all the ideas. And so I think that's really important with business and relationships and connecting and helping the spiral-based thinkers and speakers, which are typically feminine based brains, feel more comfortable in who they are, so they can embody, so they can do the thing, right?
My mind is like a little bit blown right now, because I'm like, wait, whoa, we got to pause here and talk about this for a minute. Because I am such a spiral based thinker, and I've never heard it called that or referred to that. I mean, I've always heard like the masculine linear, and like that's really the patriarch in the world, the Western world that we live in, right, is like fast facts. And like, if you're not super like chitty chatty in that way, then you're not intelligent, or people override you a lot of the time in conversations because they don't have the patience to listen to what, or like to give you the space. So I love this around, because I can feel myself when I do it, when I come up into like a higher place and then think about the options and like what I want to say or whatever. And what has been your journey? Did you used to like kind of live in the linear place and then move into more spiral, or were you always a spiral thinker, but kind of were performing in the linear way? Or what was that experience like for you?
Oh my gosh. So my brain just went, whoop.
Yeah. Take your time. I can't wait to hear.
No, okay. So I'll just say, just tap on this for a second. I was actually born to really young parents. My dad was 15 when I was born. So, and he was one of the biggest influences in my life. And he kind of has more of a introvert. He's really mellow. And so he would allow for me to be however I wanted to be, and he had lots of patience for me to speak. But because I was born to young parents, I went back and forth between the families every single day. They lived on the same street because they were two teenagers that got together, you know?
That's cute. Like, it's cute.
I had all these adults around me all the time, right? I grew up in so much adult world. And so I, from day one, was very much able to jump into the linear, the spiral, the linear, the spiral, and back and forth all the time. But I tell you what, zooming forward to corporate, and I was really successful in corporate. However, I was really sick. And I ended up leaving corporate after working my way up to the top. And the thing is, I loved my job. So I couldn't even see how sick I was because I was so happy with my job. I was like, this is the best. And I'm making so much money. And I'm like at the top. And I love the people I work with. And I love my job and all the things. And that almost made it worse because it was like an addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was very like linear and get to the point. And I just kept getting so sick. And there was a disembodiment happening. And part of my sickness is I couldn't get pregnant, and then I would, and I'd lose the baby. So there was all kinds of stuff happening there. And then I had my baby, and my whole freaking world changed.
Yeah. Say more about that. I'm like,
Oh
say
my
more.
God.
Because there's a lot of moms in this group too. So how is that for you?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, suddenly it wasn't just about me and all my shenanigans. It was about me supporting this little being that was 100% reliant on me. And it was what's best for the baby, not just what's best for me, but what's best for the baby and who's benefiting in this situation. And so what happened was, I asked my boss, can I work 1 or 2 days from home? Because I was commuting to the city at that time. Can I work 1 or 2 days from home with the baby? And she said no. And I quit right there on the spot. I was like pissed.
Yeah,
I'm like,
okay,
I
bye.
am making the company millions of dollars, millions of dollars, and you won't let me work from home 1 or 2 days a week. Oh, I was just fuming. I didn't like yell at her or anything.
Right.
Maybe I should have, but I didn't. But I was just like, you know what? Then I'm just going to go. And I burned it all down. So I quit my, 6-figure salary. I sold my 5-bedroom house. And I moved into a small place, and I just I did a bunch of other things, but I essentially had my moment of burning everything down. And then from there, I slowly emerged, and I had my second child, my third child, those were home births. And I started getting into my body again, and my second home birth, I had this huge embodied experience where the baby kind of came out spontaneously without me pushing, really. I just really allowed my body to do all the things because I trusted. I finally got to a point where I trusted her. And then the other thing that helped me embody was after each of my births, my pussy was in so much pain with sex. So I ended up having to seek out. This was like back in the day. This is like 10 years ago, before like all of the beautiful, amazing like things online that are out now where you can have access to these types of healers. But this was like unheard of. I found the one person in the San Francisco Bay Area that did this kind of work, and she helped me heal. And through being on her table, like I cried, all these things got worked through, like all the stuff. And it helped me like really get in touch with my connection to there. And this leads into like speaking, because through the hundreds of hours on the physical therapy table, 3 different times with each birth, I saw the real connection between my face lips and my pussy lips, and that there is an energetic loop. There is. And that feeds into the embodied speaking. See, there's the little golden treasure at the end of the spiral.
I love that so much. I actually just recently, I did a workshop where it was a like embodiment feminine women coach that was in it, and she was talking about how your womb and your pussy is connected to your throat chakra. So like, and she was saying that your lips are connected to your lips. And what a beautiful experience, like full circle for you to come through in your own healing process of how powerful that is, of that connection, because we're not taught it in society, common anywhere, modern day. I'm sure this was a thing in the past, before patriarch really wiped women's knowledge out. And yeah, that's a whole other topic. But anyway, I think it's so important, because as women, we are cut off from our voice. We're cut off from our pleasure in our pussy, and or having our authority or power in both. So what a beautiful experience to be able to channel that and help other women work with that in themselves and their own business, because that truly is when women stand in their power and get to start being that magnetic force of being in alignment with their abundance and with their pleasure. So that's so amazing. That's really incredible.
Yes, thank you so much. It was quite the journey. I'm so glad I'm here now.
Yeah, absolutely. And how have you seen, or how have you worked with women who come to you for business coaching and pleasure-based coaching? Is helping them find their voice or articulate things something that's really common? And tell me more about the blabbing.
Okay, yes. Yes, it's perfect, because there's a lot of blabbing that, like, for example, with my one-on-one clients, right? And they have access to me on like Zoom calls, and then in between our calls, right? So the in between the calls is where all the blabbing happens, right? And it seems like there's almost this pattern of like, I have to like blab it all. Like I have to like, what is it, like word vomit, like I just have to get it all out. And I see it as like a process of scraping like off the calcium, right? We have to scrape off all the calcium to get down, because like you mentioned before, we're so used to getting interrupted all the time. And sometimes we do it and it's a mistake or whatever, but like I'm talking about like the interruptions, like in bro marketing, in corporate, like all the time. So these women get to speak to me uninterrupted. And then the wisdom bombs that come through, the realizations, the self-healing, right? They hear themselves saying their stories and their things. And they get to like the root of who they are. And I think if you can get it yourself into a relationship like that, that you can again get to the root of who you are. And part of that like leads into like branding, right? Like if you know who you are, everyone's like, Crystal, your branding's amazing. I'm like, yeah, because like I know who I am.
That's
And
huge.
I think it's so related, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, who knew blab to brand, right?
Well, you are your brand. So the more that you are you and you're authentic and in alignment, it's effortless. It becomes really effortless. So that's important. And I think that's a piece that people try to rush
Mm,
in their discovering of what kind of coach they are, like speaking to coaches or entrepreneurs specifically. I did this a little bit when I first started because I knew, like, with my background, like all the different things I wanted to weave together. And I worked with Gina DeVee for a year in business coaching, and I came into her as a nutrition coach. And I like knew it wasn't really the thing that I was like wanting to help women with, but I just didn't know what I didn't know. I was just kind of like, I don't know how to share my story. I wasn't prepared to share my story at the time. And then when she asked me like, okay, Nicole, like, tell me what kind of coaching you do. And I started telling her, and she was like, no. She's like, you're not here to talk to women about their gas and bloating. Like, you're not a nutrition coach. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And when I told her
mm,
my story about the emotional and sexual abuse and different things I had in my childhood, she was like, Nicole, you are here to help women heal that so that they can flourish in their businesses. Like, that's the thing.
mm,
But it took me another year to articulate it, to own it, to be able to like have it make sense to myself and the world. And there were times when I tried to rush it because I'm like, I know I can help women and I want to like get out of the like part-time job that I'm doing right now. And so I was doing so much efforting in ways that were just exhausting me, and me trying to um, force a process that was before it was ready, kind of a thing. So I think that's so important to have coaches like you and that can hold that space for the blabbing, because there's a lot of coaches that don't have time for that. They're like, stop the story, da da da, don't get, like, you're making, like all the things, like, because I've heard this from coaches where it's like, just decide, just do the thing, like blah blah blah. And it's like, I'm a processor, like I need to like vomit it out. And like you're saying, that spiral where it's not me getting stuck in it, it's just part of my process to like understand it myself and then be able to articulate it. So that's so important that you spoke to that, of what the process you have with your clients in holding that space for them, because there's a lot of coaches that don't. Just like flat out, there's not.
yeah, it's either time or patience or just lack of understanding, because the thing that happens is that once we get through that, it doesn't always stay like that for the whole relationship. I mean, sometimes we'll get back into it again, and that's fine if we hit a new thing.
Mhm.
But after that, it's like things start to go like that, right?
Exactly.
And so I don't know. I also just have so much respect for like people's processes and their timeline and like relationships and connecting in the humanity, and just like, I don't know. I just freaking love people. I like to laugh. But the interesting thing is I like to listen. So I think it's that goes back to my childhood of like bouncing back and forth to all the different houses, depending on where I'd be listening or I'd be the ones blabbing, right? So I'm
Right.
just well practiced in both areas. I'm a really good listener. For as much as I talk, I listen really good too. Yeah. So I work with people one on one, and then I do masterminds, which is the current thing that's happening right
Awesome. Tell us more about that.
now.
Because I'll be posting all of your information and links for them to connect with this. But yeah, tell us about your mastermind. It sounds very
I'm
exciting.
so excited. Oh my goodness. This will be my third pleasure based mastermind, my third round where I've been like in the pleasure based business. So it just feels like each round has been so special and significant. And this round, I'm just tripling down on pleasure based business. Like, so I'm really calling in those that are curious about this or that have maybe dabbled in it a little bit. And now they want like the support of a mastermind pod. So I've got my pods are small, they're 5 women in each pod. And I've got 3 pods. I just
Have
love it
fun.
so much. I'm so
That's
excited.
amazing.
Yeah. So I think it's really important again to have that individual attention. So that's part of why I like to keep my pods small. You can't hide.
Which is also very important in business.
To get lots of attention. Um, and it's just, you can get closer with your pod squad or whatever you want to call it. Like, you can get really, really close and tight knit with them. And then there's that like saying, whatever, it's like you're influenced by the 5 people you hang out with, like the most or whatever. And so that's it. And we're going to be starting next month, at the end of this month, technically the 30th. But and I'm taking phone calls right now to talk about it. So it's all pleasure based, like pleasure sales, pleasure creating your content, creating your courses, like whatever you're doing, if you're coaching, helping you with like one-on-one. And I'm really hands-on as far as I want to know, like, yes, we talk about like theory and process and like all of that stuff, but look at the sun coming in on me
I
now.
know.
So
It looks so nice.
um, but I really want to know. I love when my clients come to me with like, I'm talking with this person and this is what they're saying. And what do I say back? And how do I handle this in like a fun, pleasurable way? Like, oh, I have a sales call tomorrow. Like, how does it work? What do I do? What do I say? How do I act? Like, how do I take care of myself? What are the things? Right. So I really like to talk about specifics. And so that's how I roll. I don't know. I could say a million things.
Well,
Just
I'm
don't have.
excited to check it out, and we'll definitely, I'll post that in the links of this video, as well. So if you are just starting out in business and you're in this group and you are curious on how to do that with pleasure, absolutely go hop on a call with Crystal and see if it's a good fit. And Crystal, I want to thank you again so much, for being on today. It was my pleasure to have you on and get to hear more about blabbing to the bank, and excited to see all the women that go through your program and see them in their quantum leaps and owning and embodying their pleasure.
Thank you.
Of course.